Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I am coming back at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In today's video, we're going to be painting these German veteran Grenadiers here, and to get everything started, I went ahead and primed them all with the Vallejo Field Gray. I used the Vallejo spray primer. Now, as you can see with the rattle can spray primer, you might miss some spots. There might be some metal shining through, like under the bags or under belts and jackets, because just the way that you hold the can and spray down on the model. So if you take a look at the Vallejo Field Gray, it actually is an exact match to the spray. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to take some of this Vallejo, and now this is a Warlord German Army Field Gray, and we will be using that as a highlight because it is a lighter tone. Okay, and all I basically did was water down my Field Gray from Vallejo and just touched up any spots that might have been missed by the rattle can. Now this paint that I'm applying is an exact match, so I can get it on anything. It will exactly match the spray primer. Alright, so I'm going to do all of these figures like this, and then I'll be right back. Alright, the next color is German Army Field Gray from Warlord. You can see that it is actually a lighter tone. It's a lot lighter, but it still works great as a highlight. So what I plan to do is just brush it on gently using a stiff bristle brush, almost like I'm dry brushing, but I'm not wiping all the paint off onto like a paper towel and cleaning the brush off and doing a dry brush. This is a technique I call wet brushing. It's like dry brushing, but it's with wet paint, so I just call it wet brushing. And I just briefly, rapidly just stroke this over the model, and it's going to hit the raised areas. And I specifically target areas that I know is going to stay field gray, like his forearms, sleeves, his pants, because he's wearing a camouflage smock, and that doesn't need to be highlighted because I'm just going to be coloring that a completely different color anyway. Like this guy, is the majority of his whole uniform is field gray, the top and the bottom. So, and instead of brushing it off on the paper, like I said, I would hit the entire thing. And basically it brings the color up, it highlights, and it allows the darker field gray in the shadows to remain a darker field gray. It also assists when I go to paint the model. If I need to paint it in any other color, the highlight actually makes it easier to pick out the different parts of the model. Now let me go ahead and finish all these, and then I'll be right back. Alright, now the next color is an obvious flat flesh. Flat flesh is a good mid-tone flesh. It's not too light like for highlighting, and it's also not dark like maybe a barbarian flesh or something like that. It is a good bright but mid-tone flesh. And what we do is we're just going to paint the face, maybe the ears and the sides of the face if it's exposed. If not, I'll just leave it, and then we'll also paint the hands. These guys are not wearing gloves of any kind, and so we just go ahead and paint their hands as well. Now, this is the technique I'm working with. It can be looked at in two ways. It could be looked at as inside out, which means I paint whatever is closest to the flesh first, and then work my way out from there, where that's one way to look at it. But what I am actually doing is painting hardest to easiest. So something that's hard to paint, and then I work out from there in layers. All right, now on these Grenadiers, you'll notice they have these camouflage smocks. And those camouflage smocks and camouflage helmet covers have a variety of different colors. What we're going to start with is the German camo beige. The German camo beige is a beige color, but it's kind of a cross between beige, which is like a very light tan, and khaki, which is kind of a very dark tan. So the German camo beige is kind of a mid tan, if that makes sense, a mid khaki. So we're going to go ahead and put that on there. And I'm painting the whole camouflage smock. I'm avoiding pouches and canteens and haversacks and shoulder straps and stuff like this. But you really don't have to avoid those because you're going to go back and paint those anyway. But I just avoid them just to make it easier for me to see where those details are. And again, this is the undercoat, or let's call it the primary coat of the camouflage smock. And the camouflage colors will lay on top of this color. Now, why would I paint the smock first? Well, because like I said, I'm working from inside out, or I'm working hardest to easiest. If I was to paint the shoulder straps, let's say the LBE, the load-bearing equipment, let's say I painted that first, then it would be very hard for me to paint the smock. So I decided to paint the smock first because it would be the hardest. Also painting the helmet cover. The helmets are usually the easiest thing to paint on a World War II model, and they wind up usually being fairly close to last. But because I need the helmet cover to be this camo beige as a base coat, I went ahead and did it now because it's going to be camouflage. Let me go ahead and do the rest. I'll be right back. All right, so now while that smock is drying, we're going to go ahead and we're going to paint the boots. They have two types of boots. They have the tall boots, the tall black boots, but they also have the combat boots, which are brown. So we're going to use black gray on their the tall black boots. I can't remember what they're called, but there's a word for them. But we're going to paint them black gray because black leather is never jet black. It's not. I try not to ever use the black paint to represent black on a model, specifically when it could possibly be faded or dirty or anything like that. I don't want it to be jet black, so I'm painting this black gray. Now, as it goes on, it looks more gray. It actually looks like it has a little bit of a green tint to it while I was looking at it when I was painting it. But as it dries, it darkens up and it almost looks black, but it has just a slight gray look to it. So we'll go ahead and do all the high boots with that. And then the combat boots, okay, now take a look at that guy right there. He's dry, and you can kind of see it looks black, but it's not black. It's a black gray. The combat boots are actually a brown leather, so I'm just going to go ahead and use this German camo dark brown, or black brown actually. And it really only goes over the toes, the instep, and the heels. So basically the lower half, like if it was a tennis shoe, just the bottoms of the boots, because the upper part of the boots is going to have a gaiter, and the gaiter is a different color. So this is brown, and it's just going on the bottom half of the boot. Now, if I get it on the gaiter, that's perfectly fine. That's actually preferable, because that means I didn't miss any spots. Also, the bottom of the boot is going to be brown as well. All right, let me go ahead and get all the brown on all the combat boots. The combat boots are the ones that have the gaiters, and they're not the high jack boot. All right, let me do the rest. All right, so now we're going to do the gaiters, and I'm using this highlight for Africa Corps uniform because it's also a camo beige, but it's a little bit lighter, so it basically will contrast just slightly with the camouflage smock. You can use the camo beige, you could use khaki, you could use any color like that, but I find this highlight for Africa Corps uniform to be perfect. And remember, at the very end, you're always going to be washing your models, or at least I do. And when I wash a model, it always brings the colors down a level anyway. So I prefer to like hit with a slightly brighter color initially and let the wash bring it down a step. All right, let's go ahead and get to the next ones. All right, now the camouflage smock has a couple of different colors on it. It's got green and it has brown. What I'm going to be using is, I'm not going to be doing a triangle. I'm not going to be using the jagged lightning pattern. I'm actually doing blotches. So I pulled out my splinter blotches pattern, which these are the green is number 1, and then the splinter blotches 2 is the brown. And you just put them in a pattern where you get about 2/3. So I'm going to use the back of this card and my marker to show you the general idea behind the camouflage pattern. Just imagine that this is the smock, and then in that smock, remember that's going to be the camo beige. The entire thing is camo beige. And then I will make a couple of different splotches using splotches 1, which actually gives just jagged, random areas. And then and I marked that it was G for green. And then for every 2 green splotches, I'm going to use splotches 2. And so imagine a brown splotch right there. So that's basically the pattern. Now, if there's a big open area, like above the 2 Gs, or the 2 greens, I might add a little bit more brown on the edge there, just, or another green or whatever. And you want to leave the camo beige exposed between the colors to give like an outline. So here we go with splinter blotches number 1 and then splinter blotches number 2. And it's usually a 2-to-1 on the pattern. Now, there's almost no wrong way to do this, because the German army went through a variety of different camouflage patterns, and also depending on the weather, or the season, or the area of the world, they might have a variety of different patterns. So I recommend just looking up some patterns online and checking out and looking and trying to visualize the color breakdown of the patterns. So you might see some with sharp lines, you might see some with triangles, you might see some that are majority brown and less green, like maybe 2 browns to 1 green. That might be in an autumn, where this might be in a summer or something like that. It just depends on which pattern you're shooting for. I'm shooting for more of a summer pattern with 2 greens and 1 brown. And I do the same thing on the helmet, except the blotches are about half the size. The blotches on the smock are about twice the size as the ones I do on the helmet. And there you go. There's the green. And they're just scattered all over. And then we go to splinter blotches number 2. And again, remember, I'm doing a 2-to-1 pattern on that. Now I'm looking for gaps between the green where I can fit in some brown, right? If I need to put a little bit of brown on top of the green, I'm not opposed to that, like an overlap, but I'm trying to allow there to be enough of a gap between the green and the brown to separate them with the camo beige underneath. And I'm not really concerning myself with pouches or straps or anything like that, because I know this is all going to be under the pouches and straps, and those are going to be painted over it. And but I am trying to avoid like canteens and haversacks and stuff, because I just don't want to deal with it. All right, now we're being conscious of the fact that there is the legs and the helmet. Now, at the groin area, there is a flap that goes over each leg, and then there's the center flap that goes over the groin. And do not make your splotches transition over the seam. You should break it up at that seam. And now we're going to use field gray. Like I said, the Warlord field gray that we used earlier as a highlight. I'm going to deliberately put it on their soft cap because I want that cap to stand out a little bit more than everything else on the figure, or at least a little bit more than the uniform. So I paint it almost 100% on the soft cap. Plus, this also does a couple of things. It also brings the soft cap up a little bit, so it makes it brighter and more vibrant. But what it also does is it disguises any mistakes I might have made when I was painting the flesh on the figure. Like I might have messed up and went towards the cap and ruined the job of the cap. So I'd make sure I go on and hit the cap. All right, let's do that. All right, so I've got leather brown here, and that's what I'm going to be painting their straps with. Like their belt, their shoulder straps are going to be leather brown. Leather brown from Vallejo tends to be a darker brown. And if you look at some pictures of World War II uniforms, a lot of people believe that those straps are supposed to be black when that's not exactly correct. They're supposed to be brown, maybe a darker brown, but when you're looking at a black and white photo from the time period, you might interpret that as black, but no, it is brown, but dark brown, like it's a dyed leather. Now there are some straps, some units did use black, so just do your research. I'm currently on these veteran Grenadiers. I am using leather brown for their straps and their belts. Just making sure I don't miss anything. There you go. All right, let me do the rest of these. All right, now I've got some silver gray here, and I'm going to be doing their bread bags or haversacks, whatever it is. It's silver gray. It's almost white, but imagine the gray that is so light that it looks almost white. But that's what I'm using on their bread bags. And the bread bags are usually underneath canteens or mess kits or anything like that. And I make sure I get the front edge of it as well. And sometimes it has like a little strap that goes over their belt. But once I get all those done, I'll be right back. All right, now we're going to do the canteens themselves. The canteens are covered in a leather. We're going to use camouflage pale brown. This is a very light brown for the leather, the suede leather that wraps the canteen to keep it cool. And if you were to wet the canteen cover down, it would keep the water inside cold. And that's even used all the way up until today, actually. All right, very simple. Now, I don't paint the canteen cup. I leave that because I'm going to come back to that later with a metal. Okay, so now I have the camouflage beige out again because a few of these models have their smock rolled up on their back and they're not actually wearing it as a camouflage cover. Maybe it was too hot out, and so they have them rolled up. Now, I'm not planning on camouflaging them. I'm just going to, because this would be the inside of it would be rolled up with the camouflage on the inside, so you would only see the lining, which is the camouflage beige. Now, I think you could, if you wanted to, you could camouflage it as well, just depending on the soldier, how he rolled it up. All right, let's do the rest, and we'll be back. All right, now I'm also using that camouflage beige. I've decided to go ahead and use the camouflage beige again on their magazine cases, or their ammo pouches, specifically the long ones, like for the MP40s and the STG-44. Those magazines tended to be the canvas. All right, now I got a camouflage, or I should say a German camouflage bright green, and I'm going to use that on the vegetation that is on their helmets. These leafy pieces are going to go on camouflage bright green on their helmets. And only a few of them, maybe 4 or 5 of them, have the leaves in their helmets. Some just exposed helmets or camouflage cover helmets, and some are wearing soft caps. So about 4 or 5 of them need this. Now I have to look closely at this helmet to see where the leaves are, because I don't want to paint what's not a leaf. So I just have to be conscious of where it is. If you make a little bit of a mistake here, it's no big deal, because who's to say that there's not a little bit of leaf here and there? There you go. That's just a couple of leaves stuck in the guy's helmet. Moving on. All right, now I pulled out one of my folk art colors called Burnt Sienna. Now you can use like a Warlord paint, wood brown, or you can use any kind of like a dark red brown, real brown, or anything like that, just straight brown. You can even use light brown or any color really, just as long as it fits with your pattern. But I'm using Burnt Sienna for my wood on my Grenadiers. So it's going to be the grenade handle. That's also going to be wood. If there was any entrenching tool handles, which these models do not have, I would be using this color. And then the rifles, only the buttstock has any wood on them, so I would be and a pistol grip would be wood. Now see, there's Warlord. You can use the wood brown. It's pretty much the same color. So that's the grenade, and then also the buttstock of the rifle, and a pistol grip. These weapons, the pistol grip would also be wooden. All right. All right, moving on. All right, so now I got my gunmetal gray out from Vallejo. I considered using like a bright, like plate mail or something like that to brighten it up, but really it doesn't really even have to be a metallic. You could use, again, if I wanted to, I could use my black gray, because your militaries would have blued their weapons, and they would have tried to remove any shine or sheen. But I found gunmetal gray works really well, specifically after you wash them and apply a dull coat. It gets rid of all of that. Now I put that on their canteen cup, mess kits, and their rifles. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to completely coat these guys with soft tone. And I like to use a mixture of 50-50 soft tone and Liquitex Flow Aid. So I get not Flow Aid, fluid medium. And that way I get like a lighter, it goes on a lot easier and thinner, and then I can spread it around a lot easier. All right, so now I've got a turntable that I'm going to put up once all these dry, and so you get a chance to see all these models. And I'll just be quiet while you get a chance to take a look at them. You also might notice on a couple of the guys with their uniforms, I touched up their epaulets with a green, like a commando green, to just denote their MOS. So a couple of the guys without the smocks have their epaulets painted green. All right, thanks for coming out and checking this video out, and I will see you in the next one.